Life is what people most desire, and death is what people most despise. However, when people let go of life and bring about their own death, this is not because they do not desire life and instead desire death. Rather, it is because they do not approve of living under these circumstances, but do approve of dying under these circumstances. Xunzi is the third major figure in early Confucianism who was born in the northern state of Jiao from 312 BCE to 210 BCE. As one of the classical Chinese philosophers who was born during the Warring State period, he shared the same interest as other philosophers who were also looking to solve the predicament that they were in. He was neglected by other Confucian scholars throughout history because the Neo-Confucians of the Tang and Song dynasties were more influenced by the philosophy of Mengzi. As a result of this neglect, many Westerners also ignored him despite his clear, eloquent, and trenchant work. Even in modern Chinese education, Xunzi is often less mentioned than the other two. However, his impact on the role of education and on the Chinese government cannot be overstated. His educational philosophy and methods became the dominant trend for much of Chinese history for over 2,000 years, and his theories on governance laid the foundation of the Han Dynasty. He also had a notable disciple named Han Feizi, one of the giants of Chinese philosophy and a pillar of the school of legalism, whom I will be covering in the next lecture. Han Feizi was very influential in crafting the policies of the state of Qian, which lasted only over 14 years. Therefore, not only was he blamed for this downfall, Xunzi was also condemned for producing such a student. Other than this information, we have little information about Xunzi's life, since most of the information we do have comes from sources whose veracity and accuracy are not fully reliable. Xunzi thinks that not only is there any good evidence for Mengzi's view, but his positions also threaten to undermine the Confucian tradition instead of supporting it. If people somehow naturally knew the way and were naturally inclined to follow it, like Mengzi's claim, Xunzi reasons then people don't need to seek guidance from the ancient sages and learn their wisdom from the text. They could instead reflect on themselves for the answers. However, encouraging people to trust in their own individual judgments will likely result in chaos and disasters if they do not in fact naturally conform to the way. Xunzi's rejection of these rival views is also reflected in his choice of analogies. While Mengzi compared proper human development to that of the natural growth of plants, and the Taoist analogized the ideal human state to the state of nature, Xunzi most frequently illustrated his view of proper human development with examples from crafts such as the bending of wood, in which humans transform raw materials into useful and beautiful products. Xunzi focused on an individual's education, moral cultivation, as well as the various aspects of governance, something that both Confucius and Mencius also focused on. However, his work is more analytical than the other two because of his deeper systematic analysis of the key presuppositions in ancient Confucianism. He is most famous for claiming that human nature is bad, but he also argued that through deliberate effort, people have the potential to overcome their natures and become good. In this developmental process, ritual plays a pivotal role. He conceives that because the rituals constitute a set of standards for proper behavior that were created by the past sages who are the ideal human beings that everyone should look up to, the rituals should govern every aspect of a person's life. Similar to music, they display certain attitudes and emotions. For example, in the case of mourning, the ritually prescribed actions exhibit grief over the loss of a loved one, even if the person does not actually feel sad inside. However, if the ritual practitioner repeatedly performs the ritual of mourning, Xunzi believes that the person will eventually develop the feelings because the ritual cultivated their feelings. If the rituals can cultivate a feeling of sadness and mourning, then they can also be applied to inculcate characteristics of virtues such as caring and respect. Furthermore, by setting up rituals for different individuals, the government is able to allot different responsibilities, privileges, and goods, and thereby helping to prevent conflict among people over their social roles. Xunzi thought that the functions of rituals can solve the issues of the badness of human nature and respond to Mozi's challenges. Unlike Mozi, Xunzi does not agree that certain impulses that are part of human nature can be eliminated or wholly suppressed. The rituals provide a path for people to express these impulses and hence satisfying certain human needs. As he penned, when a man is born, he has desires. If he cannot obtain what he desires, he must seek to satisfy them, and in his seeking, there is no measure or limit. He assumes that nature has a limited capacity to satisfy human desires, but human desires have no clear limit, so it results in conflict with man. For Mengzi, evil arises from man's terror and confusion in the state of nature, and their innate propensity to goodness is overwhelmed by this feeling of fear and insecurity. However, even when their environment is improved by the sages, they may still be corrupted by their desires and indolence. Thus, people may still require teaching despite their innate goodness. For Xunzi, the rituals allow humans to act on these impulses while helping to constrain, shape, and channel these impulses to result in behaviors that are peaceful, orderly, and beneficial. Thus, they help to satisfy certain human needs, whereas if these impulses were left unchecked, they might otherwise lead to strife, chaos, and harm. These rituals, however, are not inviolable rules, since some people who have already developed moral judgment may be put into a situation that may require them to depart from the strict dictates of ritual. Xunzi is also famous for rejecting the teleological view of nature, the view that the universe has some intentional goal. He states that if stars fall or trees cry out, the people of the state are filled with fear and say, "What is this?" I say, "It is nothing." These are simply rarely occurring things among the changes in nature and the transformations of yin and yang. To marvel at them is alright, but to fear them is not. Eclipses of the sun and moon, unreasonable winds and rains, unexpected appearances of strange stars. There is no age in which such things do not occur. Xunzi, as far as viewing heaven, or in Chinese, tian, as more like nature, an impersonal force in the world that is responsible for various phenomena and does not react to human virtue, vice, or prayer. Hence, the human performance of rituals can have no power to affect heaven. As he exclaims, the activities of heaven are constant. They do not persist because of Yao. They do not perish because of Jie. He went so far as to argue that, precisely because Tian is an impersonal, amoral force, it is so different from human beings. Thus, following its model will actually just lead one away from the Confucian's ideals. There is a unique role for human beings to play in the world with its own distinct set of moral standards and models of behavior. However, even the rituals cannot be instrumental in achieving their intended goals. Because the universe does not have a teleological structure, they may still serve an alternative purpose. One performs the rain sacrifice and it rains. Why? I say, there is no special reason why. It is the same as when one does not perform the rain sacrifice and it rains anyway. Xunzi claims that any claim on supernatural causal connections between the ruler's conduct and natural events is unwarranted, a view that was pervasive in the ancient days. Droughts can happen to both a bad ruler and a good ruler. Just as Tian operates in its own way, the human world is also on its own course, even though some natural events happen to be favorable to the livelihood of human beings. Natural phenomena and human morality are not causally related. His naturalist take on nature may seem like common sense in a modern, godless, scientific world, but it was pretty radical at the time, when many people regarded Tian as a deity with awareness, intentions, and a tendency to intervene in the world to reward the virtuous and punish the vicious. Not only did Xunzi take the naturalist position, but he also did not advise that we should only be concerned with human affairs and pay no attention to the working of Tian. We still need to study the operations of Tian. As Xunzi says, the rank of stars move in progression, the sun and moon shine in turn. The 4 seasons succeed each other in good order, and the yin and yang go through their great transformations, and the wind and rain pass over the whole land. All things obtain what is congenial to them, and grow to live, receive what is nourishing to them, and grow to completion. In other words, we must be like empiricists and strive to be like modern-day scientists, who study the regularities of natural phenomena. If we follow the 4 seasons in planting and harvesting, then we can get the maximum yield for our crops. If we are always prepared for any natural disasters, like the beer flu pandemic that we are currently in, even when something horrific happens unexpectedly, we will not be devastated. By studying the events that may happen, we can react accordingly. We do not need to rely on heaven to save us. Only advanced preparation and good governance can prevent more tragedies from catastrophes and guarantee prosperity. Xunzi also asserts that the constancy of nature can be empirically observed through our senses, which he calls the heavenly faculties. Our senses can detect the taxonomies of natural objects and their distinct properties. He asks, and how does one go about distinguishing between things that are the same and those that are different? One relies upon the senses. Things that are of the same species and form will be apprehended by the sense as being all the same thing. Therefore, after comparing such things with other things of a similar nature, one may settle upon a common designation. In this way, one arrives at a common name for all the things of one class, which everyone agrees to use when the occasion demands. Not only can we rely on our senses, but we can also use our minds to gather knowledge. He calls the mind, or the heart, in the biological sense, the heavenly ruler. The mind is the ruler of man, since it is the one in charge of sensory organs. It employs the data collected by sensory organs and make its own distinctions. He describes this process as speech, events, delight, anger, grief, joy, love, hate, and desire are distinguished by the mind. In addition, the mind possesses an overall understanding. Because of this overall understanding, it may rely upon the data of the ear and understand sounds correctly, or rely upon the data of the eye and understand forms correctly. But this overall understanding must always wait until it has received new data from the senses and match it with the data already recorded in the mind concerning a particular class of objects before it can arrive at a correct understanding of the object. Xunzi presented a crude description of his epistemological theory, also known as the theory of knowledge. The mind receives sense data from the senses, and the mind forms conceptions on the basis of senses data. Because concepts are the result of the mind's faculty of understanding, without any senses, there can be no concepts, position similar to that of the empiricists who would later on become the modern-day scientists. Even though Xunzi was against superstitions, he does not call for banning religion. He viewed that even though religious ceremonies and practices may be useless to change natural phenomena, it still serves as a humane function. He asserts, one performs divination and only then decides on important affairs. But this is not for the sake of getting what one seeks, but rather to give things proper form. Thus, the superior person looks upon this as proper form, but the common people look upon it as connecting with spirits. The important thing is one's attitude, especially sincerity in the performance. Thus, sacrifices are ornaments or refined manifestation of an inner attitude. In other words, even if there are no gods or ghosts, the performance of a religious ceremony to worship gods or honor the memory of ancestors can teach people the right attitude and demonstrate respect toward nature or ancestors. Therefore, if religious rituals can accomplish this goal, then they are not harmful to human society. Despite Xunzi's modern scientific view on nature, he still assigned the moralistic connotation that Confucius and Mengzi associated with heaven. We will end today's lecture with his view on morality, which is that our conduct should emulate the attributes we assign to heaven. He says, the sage purifies his ruler, rectifies his organs, sufficiently provides for his nourishment, follows the government, and nourishes his feelings so as to bring completion the work of heaven.